Howdy, Dr. Will Wong here, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Essentials of Life and Wellness. Let me make a recommendation and then cover 2 points in the news, and we will get to your questions and answers. Now, first, I recommend that you all go to Amazon.com into the Darrell Jordan book section. Darrell Jordan is an author. Darrell Darrell Jordan, and look for the book The Life of the Soul by J. Brierley. The book was written in 1912, and it was compiled, edited, and put into new print by Darrell Jordan. It wasn't just copied over from the old text. The book is magnificent. You'll get many great ideas about spirituality and your connection with God from the book. Also look over the other books by Darrell Jordan, both the ones that he's written and the ones that he has edited. Their teachings are wonderful, and I highly recommend them. And now to our point in the news. I've been teaching for the last, almost 30 years, that the statin drugs are absolutely useless. Not only are they useless, but whatever supposed benefit you may get to your heart is undone by the dangers that the statin drugs pose in killing off lower extremity nerves, intoxifying the liver and causing liver damage, but most of all, in causing what used to be a very rare condition known as glomerulosclerosis. Glomerulosclerosis is where your muscles begin to dissolve away, your urine turns black, you clog up your kidneys from all this protein that your body is trying to eliminate, and you die. Before the advent of the statin drugs, there were 4 serious cases of glomerulosclerosis in the entire bleeding world. These days, there are many tens of thousands. Doctors who had never seen a case of glomerulosclerosis, who had forgotten all about it after they studied it in school, or all of a sudden faced with it, didn't know its signs and symptoms, didn't know what to look for, and were flabbergasted. The patients got worse because docs had no clue what to treat, because they'd never seen a case of this stuff, and again, they didn't remember, and that killed a good many people. Now that it's known that the statin drugs do cause glomerulosclerosis, treatment's a bit faster, although some docs still aren't up there on the uptake. But I was absolutely right. The statin drugs make absolutely no difference. I will quote from an article. The research presented at the American College of Cardiology's 65th annual scientific session involved more than 12,000 patients from approximately 540 global health centers at high risk for cardiovascular health problems. The participants were randomly selected to receive either 130 milligrams of, and they list the statin drugs that they were on. Patients also received standard medical therapy, the majority of which included statin drugs or other cholesterol-lowering drugs throughout the trial. The research showed that compared with the other patients taking the placebo, patients taking the statin drugs on average lowered their, quote, bad cholesterol by 37%, increased their, quote, good cholesterol by 130%. However, the drug's favorable effect on cholesterol did not, I'll repeat that, did not translate into a reduced risk of heart attack, stroke, coronary bypass surgery, hospitalization for chest pain, or the amount of time until cardiovascular death. Now, that study came from Dr. Stephen Nichols at the University of Adelaide, the Royal Adelaide Hospital in Australia. He further said, here we've got an agent that more than doubles the levels of good cholesterol, lowers the bad cholesterol, and yet has no effect on clinical events. We were disappointed and surprised by the results that a drug that seems to do all the right things in terms of blood cholesterol doesn't translate into reducing clinical events. Folks, What have I been saying? What have I been saying for bloody ever? Cholesterol isn't the cause of heart disease. Inflammation and fibrosis is. Lowering cholesterol simply cheats your brain out of what it needs to maintain itself. The only thing we've got to show for 60 years of the anti-cholesterol diet is a huge increase in Alzheimer's, which is a brain-wasting disease where the fat portions of your brain you used to think with melt away because they're used in the rest of the body to create energy, to create hormones, to maintain the body, and they're sucked right out of the brain. If you went to med school before 1975, let's say, you were taught that you'd likely never see a case of Alzheimer's in 20 years' worth of practice because there were so few of them. Less than a handful of cases amongst 1 million people in population. And now, how many cases do we have per 100,000 folks? It's a frickin' epidemic. All because of the low cholesterol diet and because the powers that be wanted us to ignore the studies that were just taken off of PubMed about 6 to 10 years ago. The studies from the 1920s through the 1940s that showed that polyunsaturated fats destroyed brain tissue in higher primates. Guess what, boys and girls? Humans are higher primates. And now on to the next medical finding. It seems that the latest disease to run rampant amongst homosexual men is anal cancer. And almost curiously, it is increasing amongst heterosexual females because anal sex is becoming popular with heterosexual women. They say that that's due to the spillover from the popularization of gay relationships now. Don't know if that's true, but a lot of women are now getting anal cancer and dying from it. More women actually than men are getting anal cancer and dying from it. Now, some folks, some medical authorities are saying it's because that HIV positive patients live longer, they engage in sexual activity, and they transfer part of the virus to the anuses of their sex partners. If that's true, then a lot of these guys are bisexual, because why are the women getting it? There have been a few very famous singers, at least one famous singer, female singer that I can think of, and a famous female movie star who both caught it. One of them, as far as I know, died of it. The other one's still alive. In the absence of either one of those gals going out with bisexual men who are HIV positive, you have to ask yourself, is it just the irritation of frequent anal intercourse that creates this? What are the records, if any, for anal cancer amongst other highly homosexual societies, such as the Afghanis? Almost every Afghan boy has been used as a sex toy by the older men in his tribe or in his group. When these fellows marry, they think that it's normal to have a penis in your backside, so they engage in rectal intercourse with their wives. There's a little village in Afghanistan where there are no children born. No gals ever get pregnant. So the U.S. Army did a study to see if it was genetic, if it was chemical toxicity, if it was whatever. Turned out that all the men there had been used as sexual toys by the older men. They thought that the penis only went into the rectum and the anus. They did that with their wives. They couldn't imagine putting their penises into the part of the woman that bled and peed. That's why there were no kids in that village. So what are the incidences of anal cancer in places like that? I don't think there are any statistics, especially not in caveman Afghanistan, that have been created. But it would be interesting to see the relationship between the constant irritation of anal intercourse and the creation of anal cancer, or if it is specific to a virus causing the cancer. We've known that viruses cause cancer for 50, 60, 70 years. As long as they've been making vaccines, actually, We've known that some of the viruses that are in the vaccines cause cancer. If you don't believe me, go to YouTube and look up the YouTube video titled Merck, Cancer, SV40, and AIDS in Vaccines. Merck, Cancer, SV40, and AIDS in Vaccines, admission by Dr. Maurice Hilleman. If you're not familiar with who Maurice Hilleman was, he was the lead cancer researcher and creator for the Merck drug company, which back then and still now makes most of the world's vaccines. And now let's get to your questions. First one, Dear Dr. Wong, I have a serious question, if you would please consider it. Sadly, in today's world, relationships are very hard to keep together. Now I have become the victim of a breakup after many years. Without going into details, I have found myself feeling very depressed. I have a hurting in my chest that is almost too hard to deal with. I know it's all about emotions and getting it under control. I have tried to repair that relationship, but to no avail. I can't sleep past 3 a.m. in the morning. This pain is 24/7. I wake up thinking about it. I go to sleep with it on my mind. I guess what I should be asking is, should I be on an antidepressant of some sort? My symptoms are like I feel like I'm walking around in a fog with emotional pain. I try not to dwell on it and stay busy. I may have a brief moment of relief, but it comes right back to the pain. I feel very weak, especially in the legs. I don't want to be alone, but at the same time, I'm not very good company in the way I feel. I'm just looking for suggestions, perhaps St. John's wort, or if need be, a prescription med. Any direction you could give me would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your time. And my answer is howdy. Without elaborating, I know exactly where you're at and what you're feeling. Here are my suggestions. For sleep, go to earthpulse.net, EARTHPULSE.net. Can't say enough good things about this unit. After 27 years of non-restful, fitful, and troubled sleep, I can now sleep soundly, waking up feeling rested and settled, and it really does help healing physically and mentally. If you get one, please tell them that Eric Fiorello sent you. For the heartache, the depression, and the stress, equanimity, 2 or 3 capsules 3 times daily. I suggest that you start off with the 3 capsules 3 times a day, and once you're feeling better and emotionally healing, back off to 2 capsules, and then eventually to 1. Got this formula from an old-time Arkansas master herbalist 30-plus years ago, and it's been a gift from God. Stress enough to enrage to kill or cripple and shrink. Depression sufficient for suicide. Addiction to heroin and more were the things treated by this herbalist with this formula, and he was ever so right. Even when we fill our days with stuff to do to take our minds off the loss, there's always coming home at the end of the day to 4 walls and emptiness. And that's where the earth pulse and the equanimity will become your best friends. Hope you begin to feel better, stronger, and get on with a new and brighter life soon. Be well and God bless. Dr. Wong. Now, folks, I have to mention that the Earth Pulse sleep units, which can also be used to speed healing if you're sitting down or whatever, you'll read the instructions when you see them. There are various ones. The least expensive one works just as well as the higher priced one. There are more functions, there are more doodads to work with. You can do a bit more with the higher priced ones, but if all you can afford is the bare bones minimum one, that's the one I've got. That's the one I use. Just got a fancier one for my wife. We haven't set that one up yet, but it works wonderfully. All of their units work wonderfully, and as I've already talked to you about their ElectroStim unit, it works so well for relieving pain that I think it works better at relieving pain than the $6,000 microcurrent electrotherapy unit that I've been using since 1980-something. I can't recommend these units enough. And again, if you make a purchase of one of these units from earthpulse.net, be sure to tell them that Eric Fiorello sent you. And the next question reads, Dear Dr. Wong, hope you are well. Love to hear your opinion on the keto diets, if they are good or bad. My thoughts are that cutting out a food group cannot be good. However, I have this guy trying to say it's healthy and what everyone should be doing. Cures diabetes and blah, blah, blah. What is your opinion? And my answer is howdy. With my philosophy that every diet turns into a religion whose adherents basically have gone insane with their zealotry, I haven't been paying much attention to diets and diet fads, or this latest incarnation of the son of paleo. Remember that all diets from the 1950s low-calorie diet to the Eat to Win diet that caused today's 70% increase in diabetes and obesity have had a great deal of supportive theory and supposed science behind them, only to be found tragically wanting in actual application with large-scale use. I'm all for low carbs, have been since 1968, but I'm not okay with no carbs. It's okay for some forms of epilepsy, but in general, the brain does not like zero-carb diets, and if taken to extremes, it presents a medical emergency. Keep to the Buddhist saying of nothing in the extreme. Be well and God bless. Dr. Wong. You know, we were always taught in school that ketosis was something to stay away from. Let's see what the long-term effects are on the folks who are adherents to this ketogenic diet. Let's see what the health outcomes are for them a few years down the road, and then we can best judge as to how well this diet actually works. And the next question goes, Dear Dr. Wong, I intended to ask if it's okay to take the enzymes with the hydrogen peroxide at the same time. The peroxide also needs to be taken on an empty stomach, so it's the first thing I take in the morning 30 minutes before food. I take 600 milligrams of gabapentin 3 times a day and 1B vitamin complex twice a day for the pain in my feet. Can you suggest anything that might work better? I hate taking the gabapentin. I was just diagnosed with IPF in April based on a lung function test and a CAT scan. I have no prior test to compare past history with the current time. Using CAT scans as a base, I will go back in July for another scan and lung function test to see where I stand in the progression of the fibrosis. I'm taking your enzymes now without the recommendation of my pulmonologist. He's not a fan of alternative medicine. If you're interested, I will let you know how my evaluation turns out. And my answer is howdy. Nope, don't have anything to replace the gabapentin with, but I have to say that gabapentin sure beats the opiate meds for neurological pain. Many of the diabetic peripheral neuropathy patients have had a good bit of their pain relieved and circulation restored by the use of systemic enzymes for a few months, as the fibrin plugs blocking both the microcirculation and the plaque blocking the macrocirculation is sliced away, is eaten away. So there is hope. You can take the enzymes and peroxide at exactly the same time. One won't undo the other. It also needs to be said that an empty stomach is not as necessary with the Zymessence as it was with the older and weaker blends of systemic enzymes in the past. The older blends feared that a substantial portion of their enzymatic activity would be lost to digestion if taken near food, so not enough of the enzymes would be available for absorption and body-wide action. With the Zymessence, that's not as much the case, as it only takes 1/12 to 1/16 of the enzymatic activity of one Zymessence capsule to digest a Thanksgiving or Christmas feast. So the taking of Zymessence near food will not result in a loss sufficient to impair the systemic, the body-wide action of the enzymes. If possible, try to take the Zymessence 30 minutes before a meal or 60 minutes after, but if it's not, then take it anyway, and don't worry. After 2 or 3 months of the enzymes, I advise all PF patients to go have an SaO2 vital capacity test, X-ray, and other imaging studies redone. Their doctors are usually very surprised, and I think yours will be also. Be well and God bless. Dr. Wong. You know, it's only been the case in the hundreds of pulmonary fibrosis patients that we've spoken to in the last, 10, 15 years since Dr. White, the late Dr. White of Winston-Salem, discovered that the enzymes worked on PF patients. I've only spoken to one or two where the PF didn't get significantly better, and I've spoken to many who actually had their diagnosis of pulmonary fibrosis dropped and reversed. Now, has to be said that for those PF patients, COPD patients, IPF patients who have benefited from the enzymes, you can't stop taking them. You can reduce the dose that you take, but you can't stop taking them. In those patients who did stop taking them, thinking that they were cured, which is a word we're not allowed to use, what happens is that in 12 to 16 months, the fibrosis comes back because you've got nothing to control the chronic low-grade inflammation that your lungs have that cause the growth of the fibrosis. Again, remember the equation. Don't ever forget this equation. Irritation leads to inflammation. Inflammation leads to enduration, hardening, which is done to your fibrosis, and enduration leads to death. So, we need to keep on controlling the low-level inflammation to keep the fibrosis from happening. You can't stop taking the enzymes. Keep on taking them, even if the diagnosis of pulmonary fibrosis is dropped. And on to the next one, dear Dr. Wong. I'm a 44-year-old male that feels is having trouble with different things and wondering if the progesterone would be of benefit to me. Do you have a lab test that I could test my hormones? Or what would you recommend as far as finding a doctor who could check those things? Appreciate that much, and my answer is howdy. Anti-aging docs are the best docs to consult for the issues that crop up after the age of 40. Go to the A4M to find a directory of those docs at www.worldhealth.net. Be well and God bless, Dr. Wong. You know, this email is kind of sketchy in the information that the fellow gave. Obviously, he was embarrassed about talking about whatever might be happening to him. But when you start getting over 35, so all the old aches and pains from all the old injuries that you've ever had start setting in. When you get past 27, when physiologically old age begins to happen, remember that between 27 and 35, we have the most precipitous drop in our conditioning, in our looks, in our health, and in the onset of the diseases of structure like arthritis. All that begins to set in after 27. Usually by 35, we are feeling a bit creaky. We are feeling all of the old injuries that we might have had from car accidents or from just plain falls or accidents or from athletic activity. So that by 40, 45, things are really beginning to feel like they're winding down. Wait till you hit 50. That's the next big slide after the slide between 27 and 35. Gerontologists, who are the old people's doctors, are useless for this crap because they like you being old. They make money off of you being old. You don't want to be old. You want to have the hormone level, you want to have the energy level you had back in your late teens and early to mid-20s. For that, you need to go find an anti-aging doc. And again, the best ones are found at the A4M worldhealth.net. And the next question, dear Dr. Wong, I'm a long-term user of enzymes from 1999, and I just went to the doc and he said my blood pressure was high, 180/100, and wants me on linezolid at 10 to 20 milligrams a day. Is that a good protocol for me at 62 years young? 5'8", 320 pounds. Yes, I'm overweight. Help. What else could I be looking into to enhance the enzyme process? Also, I play a lot of pickleball as beach volleyball in our age group is dying fast. Now tennis elbow has shown up lately, and I'm using your book, Chapter 12, but what amounts of time do you suggest for the rest, ice compression, and elevation protocols before I begin to use the limb in sports again? What else should I be looking at to enhance the enzyme process? And my answer is howdy. Enhancing the enzyme process depends on the product you're taking. For what you described happening at your elbows, if you've been on systemic enzymes since '99, you're likely taking Wobenzyme. And if you're not taking 30 tablets 3 times a day, you won't get very far. Doses of other products vary, and you'll never know which one will actually work by reading the label specs. Read this to find out why, and I sent him to the Comparing Zymessence page at drwongsessentials.us. Keep up your rest, ice compression, and elevation protocol until you can move and do light play with relatively low pain and dysfunction. Remembering the sports medicine adage that you don't play to get into shape, you get into shape to play. So what are you doing for conditioning yourself to play beach volleyball? Because the game itself won't do it, and that's why you're getting hurt. On your weight, I'll lay odds your thyroid is low, as well as your testosterone being low and your estradiol and estrone being high. Get it measured. Don't accept the normal for your age diagnosis from the doc. Normal for your age is the road to decrepitude and death. If your doc does not understand hormones and anti-aging medicine, go find an A4M certified doc who does. And again, I sent this particular fellow to worldhealth.net. On your blood pressure medications, I'm not your doc, so I can't comment on his recommendations. But I can tell you that the 2 blood pressure medications with the lowest amount, almost zero, of anti-sexual side effects are Diovan and Coreg, and they are amongst the safest blood pressure drugs overall. Be well and God bless, Dr. Wong. And on that note, I wish you all God's blessings. Be well, and I'll chat with you again next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining Dr. Wong this evening for today's edition of the Essentials of Life and Wellness. If you have any questions about today's show, or if you would like to ask Dr. Wong any other health-related question, you may send an email to radio@drwong.us. That's radio@drwong.us, or telephone him at 940-325-2147. The products mentioned in today's show, as well as all of the other products Dr. Wong recommends, can be purchased online at docsprefer.com. That's www.docsprefer.com. Or you can speak with a customer service representative at 940-325-2147. Dr. Wong also has an extensive natural health website filled with articles written in Dr. Wong's own unique and easy-to-understand style that discuss natural remedies for some of today's most common and debilitating chronic conditions. You can find these articles at drwong.us. That's www.drwong.us. Until next time, we hope you have a safe and healthy week. Be well, and God bless.